Trying to be honest and come clean, I made the worst decision I ever could have. I told my mom about how I was fucking with the powder. She said she didn't tell anybody, but the treatment of the whole house changed, plus on top of that I knew it was time to kick it cause I started seeing the signs shortly after, like there was more influence than I acknowledged when it came to the dope and the politics of the streets. Niggas that got high were easier to manipulate and control for send out shit. Not to mention, the same nigga I felt was a real nigga and was supposed to be my nigga, started to seem more and more like he set me up and was going for the move again. On this lil situation that transpired, one night I had just told him I was about to bend a corner and where I was gonna be, thinking nothing of it. I hit the nigga up to see what the situation would be with some lil yayo that I definitely would have been able to cover the following day, but anyway, I was getting dope on credit here and there when I didn't have money and was consistently spending with him when I did have it. Keep in mind, I had a homeboy that would pull up on me just to chop it up, just like this nigga would do, but this nigga would drop smut on everybody. But my other homeboy would pull up and we'd politic about shit and talk about moves. I was a blood or pyro, per se, and he was a vice lord. He introduced me to the dope on a more proper scale after this nigga had already hooked me, but he was like, if I was gon' be fucking with the shit, fuck with some shit like the fish scale, big chunky and easy to bust down quality shit like he had, and he would just throw me dope cause he knew I was fucking off. Me and him used to really do business on the X, or some say pills, ecstasy. And we linked in cause he was grieving for his brother he had just lost, and I was always a listening ear to a fellow black man in distress. I believed in consciousness. But anyway, I could have always went to him, but he had a heavier flowing trap and was really having motion. I met him through my uncle. He never tripped on the money, so I showed extra love when I was up, just like he did, but he was a married nigga with his girl's kids that he loved like his own. He had a family, and I always respected family, so during this point in time, I only liked to call on him when necessary and do business when he was around. But dealing with this other nigga, I knew he was just trapping to get by, serving off no more than a ball, but this who I was fucking with, and just like my homeboy that showed love, in the beginning, he was a thorough nigga too, and thinking this nigga wasn't trippin', I should have followed my first mind when I already knew he was just a 8-ball type of nigga, not really having more than he pretended to. Long story short, I felt like the nigga backdoored me and was trying his hand for the second time over the few lil dollars I owed him. The same nigga who went for his move cause he caught me without it. I could have sworn I seen him walking down the same exact street in a hoodie that bruh was trying to get me to walk up in order to meet a nigga who was supposed to give me the lil quarter ounce I asked him to shoot me, but he was on the other side of town. Keep in mind I had already been paying off the other lil couple of dollars even though the nigga was shorting the pack. All of this shit started to seem way more possible than me just tripping on this weak ass stepped on dope. The nigga he was trying to get me to go and meet was acting iffy, like he wasn't trying to fuck with me. I couldn't tell if he was doing it for my benefit or dragging it out to see if I'd get desperate and walk to meet him, and run into the tough nigga again, cause keep in mind, for your notice, the nigga who stretched me when I didn't have the burner was his baby mama sister's baby daddy, and they were close. He had seen the nigga the night before. The nigga used to be my homeboy too, and I always kinda overstood him and was having more, but he was supposed to be the homie, so I thought, but I always second-guessed it and had a feeling that kinda let me know that someday when this nigga's balls got big enough, he'd definitely be a problem that I'd have to handle and deal with by any means if he was ever stupid enough to cross the line. Anyway, I put the shit together and thought on it, but had already made up my mind on what I was gon' do. My decision was made based on the fact that besides the whopped dope and thoughts of the setups, this nigga sold me some fentanyl pills just a few nights before and said they were perks, but I doubted, so I only took half of one and I was fighting for my life, snotting powder to shake off falling asleep and not waking up, but the pill was overpowering. The whole time I'm saying damn, this nigga really hit me with some fentanyl, and I kept fighting and resisting so I could shake back, and if I did fall asleep I would be balanced enough to not go comatose. The night faded to morning and I was finally comfortable enough to let the lasting effect go ahead and take over as I kept hitting the powder and could still fall asleep to wake up and shake it off as the feeling of euphoria and overwhelming drowsiness lasted for about another day. This shit was strong. Now that I'd survived, I was just playing naive and playing my part, staying close enough to sink my teeth and the hooks in as soon as the time came and the moment presented itself. I had to remember, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, or as close to it as needed, so I went to the Godfather. Everybody knew the nigga was weak for this prostitute hoe that supposedly had AIDS. Shit, he liked hoes in general, real street walkers. He was a tender dick nigga that claimed to be pimpin' and on his P's. I knew this hoe was always begging, and from her background the bitch was a low life with nobody, but I felt the hoe was choosing me every time we came in contact, and she thought I would be tender, always looking for me to be sympathetic and compassionate cause I talked good shit to her and made her feel human and would play into the emotional shit she was saying when I didn't give two fucks. I had been playing this role for a long time now. Niggas didn't come correct, so I acted like I didn't have shit and was half-stepping, putting shit together behind the scenes. I dressed bummy and wore the same clothes and played broke, even got a lil musty from time to time. Sometimes, however, the dope really did seem to have control. It was fucking my body up from my usage. My teeth were bad and I had a fucked up nose from so much snortin', so I was halfway in and halfway out, but I wouldn't let it fully take control. Everybody thought at this point I was just another junkie-ass nigga not having shit. To me it was an experiment for experience. I knew I was gone shake back. I was having shit, it just was coming at a far slower pace now that I wasn't able to run the trap cause my family moved back in. I had reached my lowest, but was conscious of it, shit from being diagnosed and treated for bipolar schizophrenia and psychosis and being in the mental facility. I had even tried getting disability, but a nigga had no help and no luck. I could hear my family's whispers and see the signs. To them I was a junkie and they was committing plenty fraud in a nigga's name and using me for whatever they needed. I was a handmade and field nigga to them, and if I didn't move fast enough, shit, it might just be a problem. I knew my uncle, who was getting high and they knew of it, had already thrown me under the bus and told off on me to them that I was getting high too, but they all tried to act like they didn't know and keep it a secret, but I had no privacy and somebody was always talking. I wasn't shit like my relatives who were all successful and had connections and good jobs and shit now, and if I ever got too close to the truth, I always felt like somebody in the family, a certain someone in specific, would take me out and they would say I was in a drug rage and caused them to have to kill me. Shit, I had already got shot once before, just a few years prior when I had my mental breakdown. I wasn't stupid, I believed in the family shit, but they already was shamed when it came to me and I had bad history with them, plus the drugs and the fact that they already said I was crazy. I was being treated for a diagnosis like a lab rat with no benefits, but they made sure I got my shot every month and I felt like if I didn't they would put me out. But back to this wannabe slick, false prophet, fake pimpin' ass nigga, both of them, cause the nigga that snuck me was claiming to be a pimp as well, but the whole lovin' homie though. I knew he was weak for the bitch, so I was gone treat her good and have her lure the nigga in so I could pounce and strike on this nigga, but that was to come. I figured it was worth the money the Godfather was offering for this nigga head since they were at odds. I had to be careful though. Everything in me was telling me that this nigga was a rat. He had been to jail on major charges over 5 or 6 times in the past 4 months, and every time this nigga got right out with a slap on the wrist and facing no time for any of the charges, even after getting caught taking dope in the jail and conspiracies for major crime rings, but the nigga skated every time with no problem. It was like the nigga was getting arrested on purpose so the niggas with him would get caught up cause he always had a charge partner, but he somehow always got out. The nigga used to pull up on me just to chop it up and talk about every nigga that he fucked with but claim he had problems with, until them niggas was in front of him, so I always knew he most likely had his mouth on me when he was talking to them. Inside and out, I knew he wasn't my nigga, I was just entertaining the time, cause I was dumb for getting high. I went along with the nigga bullshit. I had been weak but I was gone capitalize off this shit and finally make it pay off. All of the niggas around didn't do shit but gossip, they all were just like him, and these was the type of niggas I had embraced and was fucking with. I was off my square trippin', no matter how cautious I was. I never should have taken this road and never should have fucked with them. These niggas wasn't even my type of niggas. I was a loner for a reason. I had fallen for the okay dope and got hooked on the dope because I was still craving ecstasy, but it was scarce and the dope was given to me as a handout in the beginning just to bait me in, and I went for it. However, the opportunity fell in my lap just like I knew it would. This nigga was at it again, at odds with his baby mama, and he needed somewhere to stay that he could trap out of at least for the weekend, so he called and asked me to book him a room so his baby mama couldn't find him if she called around or decided to go hotel to hotel looking for him in the neighboring area. So I jumped at the opportunity and I did. Just like I knew he would, he had the prostitute bitch that I had been coaching, in the room. He got full of the powder, and when he was going too hard he started pouring up the drink, but I had the bitch to drop 2 of the same fentanyl pills that he sold me, in his drink while he was out the room making a serve. He was stupid to trust this bitch, and if he didn't OD before I got to him, he would at least be stone cold sleep, cause I know he had been fucking with the fun, so he might be a lil more tolerable than a nigga like me. But once the shit kicked in with the drink, he was out, and I pulled up to the hotel in a steamer. For those that don't know, that's a stolen car, and it was shortly after Corona, so a nigga could still wear any kinda mask and not get questioned, and I made sure no tattoos or noticeable marks were visible, and the bitch let me right in without any worry of being recognizable when leaving, cause she was made up in a wig and disguise herself and wore a hospital mask coming in and held her head down when walking to avoid direct camera view with a hood on her head. Like I told her, since it was a chilly rainy day, but anyway, I got in the room and this nigga was out cold, and so I walked over, and though I wanted to make a mess, I just put the pillow over his face and without resistance suffocated the nigga and placed the pillow back beside him and made sure he was dead, and once I knew that nigga wasn't coming back I still said fuck it, and it was a bloodbath. I had saw some shit online streaming in an online episode of this new show I was watching, and it said that Pablo Escobar's favorite way of execution was what they called a Colombian necktie. That's when you slit a motherfucker's throat and pull their tongue from the inside, down their throat and through the hole. I made sure to wear the rubber gloves I had in my pocket, and just to show the hatred and anger, I had the bitch cut the nigga dick off and shove it in his mouth, and we left him there after I took a couple pictures on a burner phone, a food stamp phone that I bought from a bum so I could show him to the Godfather and collect my due. I had to be prepared and ready just in case this nigga got any ideas to get me whacked upon collecting payment, to tie up all loose ends. Once I was in range I hit him up over the walkie-talkies we had and let him know the job was done, and I sent the bitch along instead, with the phone, to go to his spot, and I sat nearby to keep eyes on the location with a pair of binoculars. For a small fee, one of his neighbors was willing to let me station at their house and keep eyes on the scene. Money talked. I kept my eyes peeled, and when the bitch walked out with the duffel bag I pulled up on her at the corner and started driving up the road. The bitch was excited and knew it was payday, or so she thought. Once we got out of sight, I told her I had to make a stop and then I'd drop her off. My lil nigga popped up from being covered up on the floor in the back seat and sent her brains right through the window. I felt better paying him for a job well done than paying this talking ass bitch. I took the car right up the street to the junkyard and had my Italian partner crush the car and turn it into a fucking soda can basically, and didn't worry about anybody finding it or that bitch. It was over with for her and him. Next up was the tough guy. It was get back season. See, this nigga had a baby mama too, and his kids loved me, and his baby mama was head over heels for a nigga, so I shot her a random text just to be cordial and asked what she had going. She always said I should just take a ride with her and just unwind. She promised I wouldn't regret it, so I asked her if the offer still stood for that ride, and she instantly was ready to scoop me. So I shot to the house and left the lil homie with the Italian's car and let him go joy riding before taking it back, and I got in the car with the tough guy's baby mama, who instantly pulled up without hesitation, and when the moment was right I asked where the kids were and she said she left them at the house with her sister, so I asked if we could stop by and I could see them. I knew the son always wanted to play just like the daughter, and her oldest kids were out of the house now. So when we got there I stalled until the daughter and son wanted to play, and I insisted we play cops and robbers and I'd be the robber, but I had to take them hostage and tie them up while I robbed the bank, and I insisted that everyone play, and with everyone thinking nothing of it and wanting to see the kids happy, their mom was willing to play along, especially if she thought it would make me happy. The sister had already taken off thinking we would just stay at the house and kick it, and so once I got the baby mama and kids all tied up and bound in chairs that I positioned with the back to each other in a circle, I said, let me get a picture for the memories. Without notice, I had already slipped the baba mama's phone out of her purse and switched it to silent mode while she was at first in the kitchen right before we played this game, and I shut it off so that no calls would come through and it would go straight to voicemail and send the baby daddy into a panic once I sent him the pictures of them tied up from a TextNow app. I knew the little girl's phone was in the room dead and she couldn't find it, cause that's all the baby mama talked about on the way once I asked to see them, so she said having some fun with me should take her mind off of it until she could find it for her. Once the pictures were sent, this nigga spiraled in rage and talked about how he would kill me if I hurt them and all of that bullshit. I simply said, $150,000 and sent him an address to deliver it to, and I knew he had the money. He had just got broken off from his deceased mom's life insurance since she had just recently passed, and I told him he had 30 minutes or his family would be dead. That nigga made it there in 20, and as soon as he dropped the bag and turned to walk off after knocking and ringing the doorbell, the motherfucker waiting looking through the peephole slung open the door and blew his back through his chest and stood over him to finish the job before dragging him and the bag inside. Just to be a gentleman, in my polite manner, I fucked the dog shit out of his baby mama, while knowing this nigga was dead. I was up $350,000 plus $200,000 I had in a suitcase inside of a garbage bag sealed and inside of airtight and compressed vacuum sealed bags inside of the suitcase and buried in my grandmother's backyard deep. The 200 came from the pills I pressed up and made and called COMPLEXFAMMS or CXF. Once I met Starletta and her sister plugged me with the taxes, but for short, I'ma get into that, but mostly they were called death drops or DDs. The name that stuck was roulettes because this shit was deadly, straight lethal, and it was a risk playing with this shit. Like Russian roulette and a gamble like roulette at the casino, but the high was so intense, and if you want to ride the roller coaster, this was the speedball of a lifetime. I called them Complex F because they were made up of cocaine, oxytocin, morphine, Percocet, Lortabs, ecstasy, Xanax, and perfect dose of fentanyl in each one, just a pinch, Adderall and meth and Molly. Each ingredient to battle with the other, creating a roller coaster, and I sold them for $200 each, and I sold a ton, but I waited till after my first $200,000 to bury it, and then once making expendable profits to spend, I sold more without problems, re-ing up and already purchased products to mix up more batches to press, and overall, enough product that I had pressed up with the new machine after I sold my first 100 and made 20,000. This was a consistent stream and flow of money because of that near-death blissfulness and the euphoric excitement from the rush of the pill. They were some big-ass pills, so I struck X's in the center of each so that it could be broken up into segments and get your money's worth, for normal-sized pills pressed into one with segments. I started working on cleaning the money now, through entrepreneurial practices and legitimizing in order to wash the money and use it for investments into more profitable legal ventures, or at least make it lawfully spendable. I started a decently placed level of incorporation by going through the formation process and legalizing a business entity, so I was gonna wait a little minute before I started spending money without proof, so I knew as self-employed, I could make my own pay stubs and keep a detailed financial ledger to track business, and since I had tattooed over 10 years now, I used that along with all of the works from my portfolios of all the projects I had done to make money and started to depositing into business bank accounts. I picked up some builds to build a credit history for the business, established some trade lines, and a year later I started small businesses to generate a further legal stream of revenue. After establishing a positive and good reputation with the credit bureaus and the bank, which I had a connect in, my sister, I went to her seeing that on paper we didn't share a last name nor any sign of relation or sibling ties, and she approved my request for a loan to purchase this foreclosure factory that I could use to set up a plethora of different collective investment establishments all under one roof, one step at a time, at some point throughout certain point on the weekend or special occasions we could throw bashes and balls. I also had started devolving a clothing line and installing and setting up a recording studio along with a spacious closed-off area for video shoots and etc. It was a huge building that would prove very useful. I even used a portion of the building for a very spacious inside tattoo parlor. I had far bigger plans, but this was the start. That initial $550,000 had done well, but because of the proper uses of resources, when I spent $500,000, it came and was coming right back that I didn't need the bank money, but I wanted it because it would leave a great portion in my pocket at the moment, and with my on-time payments, it would establish more trust and appreciativeness for the placement of my money in their bank and would extend further credit in the nearby future. Off 2 bodies and some drug cells I was at my $1 million point, but it wasn't shit. I had gotten acquainted with the wealthy and I wanted what they had. The Complex Fs had now went nationwide, and I was flooding cities in every state with them because I was the only one accessible to a real chemist that knew how to purify and bond chemicals into brand new discoveries, true wonders. I paid him to teach me, and boy did I learn. See, this was another level than just mixing and pressing, this was an entirely new drug now. I had everything on deck though, I sold it all and made a hell of a profit. Like I said, I got the startup money from this chick named Starletta Sister Nicole. I got lucky when I met Starletta. She was thick bitch with a real big ass and soft lips with a fat ass pussy that had a print like a peach. She was a dyke chick that was the older sister of my brother's new bitch. Her sister did taxes and worked for the IRS, so it was a win-win situation once I got in good. Crazy part is this, love just knocked on my door. She was looking for her sister, and all the gay shit aside she was living by, she chose up off the top. After my talk with Satan, this perfect gift appeared, just what I needed to get over the simp shit I was still feeling for my ex. Right off the top, when tax season came, this changed shit, the tables turned and I had a foot back in the door to becoming a money-getting nigga. Starletta's sister put me through for 22 bands and only wanted 6 as her cut, so I broke her off. With money in the pocket I got a sack. I bought everything: cocaine, oxys, morphine pills, Percocet, Lortabs, ecstasy, Xanax, fentanyl, Adderall and crystal or ice someday ice cream, shrooms, and pounds of kush. Of course I bought a lil whip to get from A to B, just a lil scuffler, and got an apartment so I could move how I wanted and needed in order to make money. I knew who to serve to now, where to go, when to post up, who liked what, and how they money looked, spending wise. I even came across some heroin that I just copped and put up till I had clientele and a consistent line on it. The factory was our hangout. We even ran a casino inside for private parties at certain times and made everything disappear when we were all done gambling. My great-grandfather was a gambling man, so it was in me to love shootin' dice. That's how we met a lot of the celebrity rapper niggas when they came to the city, or we was in the city working with artists on the label we had started, me and some of my henchmen. Niggas would shoot dice for their artists' contracts if they got desperate enough, and for pink slips when that cash on hand they were used to carrying wasn't on hand. This wasn't the place for niggas with car notes. If niggas had more money than us, it was time to drop the crooks on 'em. We even shot dice for niggas to do features and clear the recording so we could drop the song and build a big buzz for our artists. I named the label $1 Nickel, cynical, which by definition meant we did things by ways opposed to the normal and proper ways of doing them, but I put the S as a $sign and the I as a 1 to represent the almighty dollar, and spelled it cynic cause we were all unrepentant sinners with blood on our hands, and with the AK for the assault rifle and the AL for Anno Luciferus and Masonic AL illusions. Being a former Mason, I didn't find shit free about it. To call it Freemasonry, like any other thing in life, all this shit came with a cost, but it did have some perks here and there, every now and again. But if you ask me, I got blackballed for being too damn smart, but active, and wild. I was still a blood, and it just so happened them niggas was mostly Crips or GDs, so it was technically still just niggas and the politics of the streets. However, this was the path of entry into the mysterious and well-concealed Illuminati that everybody spoke of at one point in time. Through the Masonic affiliation I shared amongst the Brotherhood, I became aligned and part family of many different, wealthy and common me, powerful, and plain. Shit was a bit much for me though, dealing with bullshit that seemed staged and too ongoing, plus they wanted to use a nigga too because of my loyalty. I chalked the shit up to being a pyramid scheme and ceased fellowship and renounced and denounced my affiliation with the lodge, but couldn't detach myself from the Brotherhood and Order. I didn't blame Masonry for its faults, which I felt the fraternity itself had none and was perfect. I blamed the niggas at fault within our lodge, especially after hearing half the shit I heard about shit conspired against me to railroad me and how niggas were trying to defraud me and stealing money, along with niggas recanting vouches because I couldn't be tamed, as far as how I dealt with shit and questioned shit that needed to be questioned and spoke up when I felt it necessary to speak up. Nonetheless, I still lived by Masonic codes, practices, and law. I was brothers with judges, police, politicians, lawmen, celebrities, scholars, and wise men, and gangsters, so I understood that even the highest orders of society were still rooted in the underworld and lived by La Cosa Nostra and the Code of Silence. Though I didn't always agree with the shit, it always worked in my favor. Shit, my pops was a Freemason and my grandfather was a Freemason just the same. I was always interested in it and snuck and read the book at a young age. I didn't know I was dealing with all-seeing, all-knowing forces that had a tie on me since my youthful days of childhood. See, a lot of folks join for the benefits, but I made the worst mistake ever. I actually took the shit serious, and it had an unrelenting stern firm hold on me, a real nice grip, I should say. But like I said, I was blackballed and considered too unorthodox for those I had long since been in the presence of. After making amends after our shortly lived, brief disagreement, back on a cordial note, we lost a brother, the brother I was initiated with, and the rift was set in once again. They charged me $50 and each brother with me that I had brought in, $50 each for a ride to go to the funeral. However, we still weren't the old band of brothers that we were. All of the fellowship were at odds and everybody was looking to get even. As a part of the fraternity though, it will always be found beneficial, and I feel no rules truly govern the entirety of it all. Every man becomes his own master in a way. I was like David Ruffin, I didn't like rules, nor what came with them. All of the brothers parted ways, and that's how the tough guy started on a path of hatred towards a nigga. I brought him into masonry in our past years when he was studying Moorish science and I was teaching chemetics or chematology, and the whole conscious and woke movement was still in effect. He felt like the order owed him something. He thought he would just join and be handed a suitcase full of money for becoming a mason. Shit didn't work like that, so he ended on a bitter note, especially after I parted ways, and he claimed he was in support of my decision and he was taking the same actions until I said otherwise. Plus I believe this nigga was still mad about his baby mama wanting to be friendly with me and shit when he was the one who insisted we be cool and cordial and be comfortable socializing with one another. I didn't give a fuck what the reason was, but this nigga was long gone, dead in stone now. I made sure to take a trip and visit his grave site routinely, just to piss on his grave and tombstone, right along with that other niggas. When I was nearing my first million, I decided to buy 2 kilos of gold at $100,000 each, a lil financial and security backing that I buried just like the money. I was thinking bigger than the moment. Shit, I wanted my own printed currency. All of the businesses were doing well and I got cool with this nigga I met that was into stocks, day trading, credit restoration, and all type of shit. I put some money in the stocks and into crypto and stayed patient. This wasn't money that I would die without, so I could afford to let it sit. I opened up a soul food restaurant for my mom. I finally felt comfortable enough to spend some money that I could let show. I went bout a big ass diamond covered chain with a huge diamond covered pendant on that motherfucker with a custom bail and a couple watches, rings, earrings, bracelets. Shit, I even went got veneers and still bought a grill. I felt it was time to look the part. I had a nice lil mini mansion built from the ground up just like my uncle, and I was in a brand new G-Wagon, riding the year, meaning most recent edition. I had these white boys I knew that fucked with building custom cars and drag racing. I paid them some side cash that I had and I could touch, to build me a 1951 Mercury like Jesse James, all black candy painted with red seats and nose, and it shot flames out the tailpipes. A custom chariot with hydraulics, shit that I didn't know if it was possible to actually pull off with this car. Everything was consistent and running smoothly, plus I had already eliminated 2 targets that would have otherwise been a problem. I started college funds for my nephews and nieces and savings accounts for my lil cousins, trying to break the generational curse. Of course, as I made more money, I gave the family spending money, but I was always in motion now and always on the go. I kept the complexes rolling and I sold products individually as well, but mostly only in quantities. I learned how to fix my credit, and when I finally was able, with the businesses flourishing and with open new successful endeavors, one venture at a time, I visited the local college and paid for special treatment, having the professor coming to me giving me one-on-one instruction and teaching, allowing me to gain credits once they helped get me enrolled with special privileges under unique circumstances. I majored in psychology with a minor in criminology and took some business courses for a lil extra on a back end for a dual scholarship. Some shit that wasn't supposed to be possible, but I was gonna get a couple degrees at once if I finished these courses. I committed and took it serious, and while I was in class sessions, I had my runners making moves, plus the teachers would even ride along with me or didn't mind waiting if I had to make personal special trips and serves. To think from $22K to $500,000 that I kept flipping, now I was reborn. I started working out and taking combat courses in my spare time. I fell in love with the gym again. Should I even put a workout area in the factory so that the artist could use them to tone up and work on their sex appeal? This was a business and we had to be serious if we wanted results. I studied music management and applied my street knowledge and well-known but tightly concealed ties in the underworld and made shit happen for my artists bigger than what we were already doing. I had the money to make specific meetings happen and friends in high places that owed me favors and were more than happy to accommodate me when I called on them, because I was talking real money. Even if it wasn't about the money, they valued the relationship, unlike them niggas that once sold me dope and I had come a long way from. Now I had the bricks and pounds and pills and luxury shit, designer clothes and flocks of bad bitches, multiples at a time, and them niggas wanted to be down now, always making sure to say, "Man, you remember when I used to serve you," like that shit was gone mean something to me. I was back on my shit and feeling real prosperous and staying motivated. I had several stash spots and now I had plenty of money. Even though I bought a new one, I still paid off my grandma's old house to preserve our childhood memories. I was finally a somebody to them again. I eventually had an art gallery section installed in the factory and returned to my old love for art and displayed my work along with other up-and-coming artists. With the notoriously famed reputation I was rebranding myself under, if I got killed in the streets, aside from all of the money I had already secured for my family, this would be another. I believed that talent was just as precious as talents of gold, and they were gifts given to make tools resourceful when penniless to feed the family, and so I cherished every gift God gave me and I made the most of all of my abilities. I didn't just want to be a dealer or a gangster, I didn't even just want to be a boss, I didn't give a damn about fame. Though I was quite the household name in my city and neighboring areas now, I wanted to be wealthy. I understood why gangsters presented themselves square in nature and as intellectuals that lived by a code. It was time to make those a part of me, of all affiliations, a part of the same union, so I had long thought on it, and I thought about the serpent and the tree of knowledge and how Kendrick Lamar rapped about money trees, and I pictured an evil apple with a devilish face and horns covered in dollar bill symbols like face tattoo, and I thought on it. Knowledge and money. The root of all evil, so I said I wanted to sound Italian because of the original mafioso structure, so I said take the R and put of all and cut it off at the E for evil, and it formed the word that would become branded as the name Rofal, and I said that's it, welcome to Black Italy, we are and will be, the Rofal family, and each member made a part of this family will be the Rofal family bloodline, Almeda Nostra, our way. La Cosa Nostra, our thing. Every brother in arms would one day be Fato, a made man. Now I was a godfather. Each man made would swear an oath at the cost of life if he broke it. It was performed under secret ritual that I may elaborate on a little later. You see, this organization was like a fraternal order, just as the Masons or any other as well. I legitimized Rofal Incorporated and made it the umbrella which all of the businesses were collectively structured under. I got very skilled at selling intellectual property, developing businesses, and making them successful enough to offer as IPOs and sell shares for extra revenue, but it didn't bother me or faze me one bit. These businesses meant nothing to me, they were just well-supported, structures, established, and fulfilled ideas brought forth for the sole purpose of making more money. My one true focus among many main and primary indulgences, was making the roulette a legal and legit pharmaceutical. So my scientists worked hard to perfect everything, and I would pull some strings to get some strings pulled in my favor for approval by the FDA, which wasn't gonna be so hard now. We were years ahead now, more within the President day, and the President was talking about doing away with the FDA approval needs. If I could grease some palms properly, everything would be fine. Plus I was thinking about launching my own independent shoe line as well as a cigar brand line and liquor, but that would be a short step in the future if everything kept going on the up and up. We started filming independent movies and trying to make it to the silver screen, but they were definitely certified hit favorites, true classics that did numbers streaming online, as we aimed to gain greater recognition. Our artists were traveling and touring, doing shows, making money, and we paid for radio play until they started spinning the records on their own because the shit was hot. With the artists buzzing, we were able to start solidifying deals with major labels for a percentage and with the rights that we held, to be negotiated. But we wanted to see the artists succeed, so we made shit possible and sealed deals and did great business. Everybody was eating. I still pressed the line as a Pyru Damu, and when her day came I flew all the homies to Cali to link up and get acquainted in and with the set. Now I was able to sponsor her day, and though I got a lot of love at first, now I was a real big homie cause I didn't change up and I came back and provided and made opportunities for not just the set but people in the neighborhood. Plus I flooded the hood with guns and artillery, shit like RPGs and bullets-proof vests, and even grenades and shit that I was getting from a higher authority on a military base, thanks to the connections provided from my lil brother who was now, still a young nigga but a veteran who stood, fought, and survived his full term and was now home for good. I had to treat myself to something special though, to go with my 51 Mercury. I knew this Essie that built and made guns and I paid him to build and make me a special Tommy gun or so-called Thompson with some special additions and updated modern-day modifications. I'm sure if I searched I could have found one, but this one was untraceable. I had him to even make some 24-karat gold bullets. Nevertheless, this was no ordinary Tommy guns. It had the inspiration of the original, but this was some steel and Robocop type shit, and that bitch spit out bullets with ease. It was a one of one, and he even made me a solid gold drum to throw in when I put it on my mantle. Of course I sponsored my own gold. Having money felt good. I got a Blackout, a Hellpup, a Desert Eagle, a Micro Draco, AR-15, an M16, the original AK-47 and one with cherry wood, an ARP, a Mossberg pump, a Judge, a MAC-90 and a MAC-11, a 50 calories sniper rifle for special situations. I had to keep an RPG, a gang of guns. These were just the ones I had to have: a Beretta, a Glock 19, a Glock 22 and plenty other shit, and I always wore my vest. Plus I was a toned-up swollen nigga now, influenced by OG MOMO from Fruit Town. Crips would say Tookie probably. I had respect and I had regained my reputation. Everybody noticed me now, and I was cocky and a lil arrogant towards hard leads or niggas, but I was still humble, well-mannered, and a debonair gentleman to the ladies. I never trusted anyone though. As much love as I showed, I made sure to keep my own secrets. Nobody knew about the gold I had hidden now. At this point I had accumulated 22 kilos of gold bars, but I wanted diamonds just the same, like Ace and Lulu off of Paid in Full. I had big trunks buried on the few acres I had of my own private property, and that's where I stashed the gold, and I laid false grass to cover it up with a rose bush planted on top of each one. I had a garden like Eden, and it was laced with statues and the most exotic plants and fruits and vegetables. I said soon I would buy a farm. I kept my nose clean. I hadn't ever been arrested except for once on a misdemeanor, and I read out, released on own recognizance. And it got expunged from my record the same day I went to court to see the judge. My lawyer took care of everything so I didn't even have to go in, and my record was still spotless. I had a 1 credit and I wasn't married. I was staying far away from that road to commitment. Raising my nephew as if he was my son was enough. Knew any of my stash spots. I always moved alone and drove forever before going to the spot, making sure no one was tailing me. My workers and runners only knew where the limited supplies I made accessible for them were. It was no problem because I always made sure it was well stocked with enough product in case needed, but with a limited amount in case someone wanted to get greedy and hit the spots. As I frequently visited Cali and shared the lavish lifestyle, it began to become unable to be concealed that some of the homies began to get jealous. The funk love turned into just having funk, beef/smoke, with the homies. All of a sudden I was a out-of-town nigga, and after we had flown back to the city and the following hood day approached, we were unable to make it to the set, and they targeted my OG homie that was my day one, and I fucked with heavily, and packed him out, and homies that should have intervened just let it happen. It was a fucked up situation, and even worse to see how bringing better to the hood was now only making it worse, but this shit wouldn't go unhandled. To make shit worse, the OG that they were looking up to had just killed a homie because he checked him for disrespecting one of the homegirls. Shit was all bad. All the work we had put in, traveling from Memphis to Cali on hits didn't mean shit, I guess. We would get to that later. I had too much shit going to get dragged right back into bullshit, especially by niggas that was supposed to be my own kind. The homie was good, they just woke up the beast. I hated thinking I would have had to spill blood on the set, but this shit wasn't uncommon. Meanwhile, in the city, I wasn't having any conflict, the only thing going on was the money. Then one night, as I'm pulling up to the house in the old neighborhood, my phone rings and it's my supposed to be lil homie on the line, but he had dropped the set and converted to a Muslim in jail after some other Pyru Damas tried to G-check him and called my phone to see if what he was saying about being from the hood checked out, but I knew these niggas had already made it up in their minds that they was gon' break him off and try to do him bad cause they claimed that he waited late until after already being in the facility to check in and get in the blood car, but I was all too familiar with Memphis niggas' style of banging. They was more so on some FUBN shit. I had come across conflict like that myself back in the days and I knew these niggas was gon' wreck him as soon as the phone hung up, and I'm telling em, just let him go his own way and hold his own. If they wasn't gon' embrace him, at least stall him out, but these niggas had more excuses than a little bit, talking politics. About if he just so happened to have gotten into it with some Crips without their notice of the Pyro affiliations, how it would fall back on them. So as he was on the phone talking this shit, I'm like, blood, y'all gon' do what y'all gon' do. I don't understand why y'all wanted to see if he was proper just to try and wreck him at the first chance they would get. Him like, let me holla at the lil homie, and him telling him, blood, when this phone hang up, take off on the first nigga in reach, cause I knew what they was gon' do. I hated niggas that targeted homies and had no conflicts with their enemies. That was the last time I heard from him, and now here he was on the phone years later with a voice so deep it sounded fake, and he's constantly trying to ask if there was any animosity or hostility, and I'm like, blood, why would it be animosity or hostility? I was on a whole different wave trying to welcome the homie home and show love, letting him know he was still lil bro, but all he could say was, aight, and that he got my number from his relative and was just checking, so me not thinking too much about it, even though the vibe was off. I'm still trying to get lil bro to remember it's all love, so I'm like, him in the neighborhood get with me AMD this nigga holla, nah I'm straight. And that's when I flashed back and thought about it, the last time I seen this nigga before the call from jail to try and shield him, B nigga left me hanging when I went to shake his hand at the counter in B corner store, and he walked out dogging playing that tough shit. So I just say, you know, nah bruh, it's all good. And it's still all love. And the call was over. Later that night, after I woke up in the middle of the night, I go outside, and as I lock the door and turn around, I'm hit twice in the chest. As I'm falling back, I up the Desert Eagle and start letting off shots and hit the nigga who had just tried to hit me up at close range, but like I said, I always wore my vest. As I stand over the nigga, I send one MO through his head to put the nail in the coffin and slipped off the blood-soaked ski mask, only to find it was the lil homie. I guess he had a vendetta and undying grudge because I couldn't save him from whatever they did to him in the jail. It hurt me to know that the lil homie's last attempt in life at anything, out of all he could have been doing, was trying to take me out. I went with the police to inform his mother, and I tried to put it to her the best way I could, and she just said, baby, I can't blame you, and I offered, then insisted that she let he pay for the funeral, and I just gave her the whole bankroll I had on me. I attended the funeral to pay my respects to my disrespectful ass lil homie. After we put him away, I went got a big ass silhouette of a sword and rose tattooed on the side of my face and 3 teardrops under my right eye. I got the cross in the middle of my forehead done and got La Cosa Nostra under the sword and rose and widow's son on the other side of my face. I got Solomon and Hiram above my eyebrows and Most High and Living God under my eyes. It was well-needed therapy that cost some thousands for an exclusive high-profile professional artist that was known for tattooing the rich and famous and was favored among celebrities. I flew out to meet him in Cali after the funeral, then I went picked up the G homie that got packed out and picked up the lil homies I brought out with me from the hotel rooms. Everybody had a pole on M, and we pulled up to the park looking for the niggas that packed the homie up to line up fades to see if these niggas had squabbles one-on-one. The G homie socked each one of them niggas out one by one, and when he got tired, we took fades in his place, shook hands and dipped. Niggas had to learn some respect. After that we went out to eat. The homie was feeling like Roscoe's, so Roscoe's it was. Later we got cases of beer and bottles of whatever liquor everybody we was functioning with wanted, smoked some gas with the homegirls and met a couple solid reputables from 51 Trouble Gangster Crip, male and female, and a reputable from 94 Hoovers and a couple old heads from 8 Trey Gangsters. They had love for us Pyru niggas cause we was just vibin' and showing mutual respect. Besides, they was the homies' neighbors. I was sneaky linkin' with my ex and she was with me, so it all felt normal, like I was at home. We smoked hookah and blasted the music, but we were up the hill out in the boondocks. Shit seemed deserted almost. so we had no complaints. The next morning I went for a stroll and walked to the store by myself, and I didn't have a burner on me, but I was flamed up. I was just dressed in some laid-back neat shit, and I heard these niggas talking as I'm leaving the store, and I overheard M mention they was from the enemy hood. We had just lost a homie, so we was on one, but in the same token we was pressed for time, 'cause we had to get down the hill to the funeral, so the homie was like, fuck it blood, we'll catch M next time, we'll give them niggas a pass. So them niggas got lucky. We had the drop on M with me making it back to the homie spot and the burners, but we said fuck it and shit down the hill to the funeral. After the funeral we went to a local chicken house in the local area, but it was more so enemy territory, so we kept our heads on a swivel with burners on the waist. We ate and bullshitted for a minute, then bailed out to the hood for the balloon release. Just like on hood days, the police flooded the neighborhood park and the helicopters were out, so homies on papers got ghost as they approached, but they didn't stop shit. We functioned and enjoyed the day till night. Then my day one YG slid up on me and was like, funk it, some niggas in the area slippin'. The G homies had gave word, so once again like times before we slid out and bent a couple corners and caught niggas out lack kin, all blew everything loafin', and we started hittin' at M, trying to drop every one of M in memory of the homie we had just lost. We didn't stay to watch M drop and didn't give a fuck if they did or didn't. We just wanted to send a message and a reminder that we meant business, and for every one we lost, they would lose 4, 5, 6 of them. The money didn't mean shit at times like this. I was still active, so that hood fortune shit went out the window, couldn't ever be caught sympathizing for an enemy. Now, it was time to get to the airport and catch our flight back to Memphis. The young homies had a ball like always, and we were now headed back to the stomping grounds. Every soldier was his boss in his own right, with real money in his pockets, enjoying the finest shit in life. But it was time to start making generals out of my real die-hard soldiers, the niggas that would do like the G homies told us about, that they practiced back in the day, forming a shield around the G homies in the midst of gunfire, willing to give their life to preserve those that carried the history and all knowledge and stories of the formation, birth, and growth of the hood. I had chains made with huge diamond cover pendants just like mine, and told them niggas, protect your neck at all times. For the female affiliates I bought huge diamond rings to show they were married to the mob. I even treated myself to some new pieces. Each artist had a ridiculous chain, male and female, and it was all worth it. The label was well established now, and progression was always the case. A month after I downed the Lil Homie, one of my artists went double platinum with a top 10 hit banging on the radio worldwide, and I was being made offers by executives from major labels to be an effective part of their companies. We solidified major distribution deals and had industry backing and support in favor of our campaign, with a nefarious reputation for the ways we did the devil's deeds in business. Bigger opportunities meant more money and more power and more prosperity. It was all good fortune, and we stood on business. My dad kept me on point with notice of any business or investigations dealing with us amongst law enforcement. He was a prized officer and running for councilman in the approaching election, so we did everything in our power to assure him the win. We knew how factorable it could be, and we could imagine the potential and outcomes if we pulled this off successfully. It took some blackmail and extortion to rid most of the candidates from the race to narrow it down, and we pulled strings amongst our affiliations and reminded the people how charitable we could with toy drives, school supplies, food drives, Christmas trees and turkey giveaways, which we were sure to mention when publicly speaking in favor of his placement in the campaign, and we even applied some bribery methods where and when necessary, whatever it would take to assure the win with a free concert included, with performances not only by our artists but artists we booked and paid to come in and speak in his favor. It was a tight-knit race, but we pulled it off and got him elected as city councilman. Now it was to take advantage of the possibilities. We could now have sway and approval for things that others had been blocking for quite some time now, and we had access to necessary beneficial permits, grants, funding and a lot more, just because he was rubbing elbows with the elite forces of our city, which was now truly about to be our city. I myself was now closing in on the reception of my doctorate's degree. I had my bachelor's and my master's. I was gonna be doctor now when I was approached. I was finally finishing up school and graduating in the fall, which would be my higher rise. I learned a lot, and it made me a far sharper individual and master puppeteer, so I got a picture of the devil pulling strings with the word GAP across the top to the center of my back. At least that's how I spelled it. I left room for additional ideas as they came. Now it was time to capitalize on the religious aspect. I set a meeting with the pastor of the church that my grandma raised us in when I was younger and offered to build him a cathedral if we could rely on him for favorable influence if ever needed. He saw no problem with it and jumped at the opportunity when I extended an extra $50,000 his way off the books and under the table with a new Rolls-Royce Phantom as a chariot for the angel of the church and his first lady. I even had a huge Masonic lodge styled as King Solomon's Temple anonymously built just to occupy space and was working on building a school nearby with access to these new extremely plentiful and generous amounts of money solidified through usage of my dad's affiliations and my own. Just for the hell of it I got in the studio and jumped in the booth and dropped 3 straight drop tracks dedicated to the dead guys, and each one somehow and without thought of the possibility, went viral. So I dropped videos that I directed for each one and artists were reaching out for remixes. Labels wanted me to take it seriously and see what I could do as far as a single, and being the owner of all of my material, I signed myself to my label and it took off like a wildfire. People felt it was natural and I had the image and persona with the demeanor of a criminal master and an authentic gangster, no fraudulent activity, and I was speaking on shit that people had little insight about, from hearing about me and bodies piling up centered around our organization, and I had them listening. They wanted to know in-depth details, hoping I would fully elaborate about the murders, seeing that I couldn't be tried twice and had already been the cases with lack of evidence and no proof to tie me to the crime scenes, but everybody always had great suspicion, and the track sounded very heavily in reference to the murders of those that had been committed and were frostbitten cold cases, left only to assumptions. I spoke of my black magic practices and affiliations with Masonry and the beliefs of sacrifice to the Illuminati which they felt the victims were, seeing that they were all once allegedly close friends and affiliates of my past dealings. I left everything to speculation but drew them in deeper with every bar, and they cringed as they listened and could visualize how gruesome other unsolved murders could have been, though they had not surfaced and there were only missing persons reports but no bodies ever found to tie me to a case. I talked about blood contracts and getting rich from paid hits and my connections to California and deeds done in between states on the streets. The DJs made these songs into singles and they showed proof of notice and attention, being chart toppers. Everybody wanted me to do an interview, and without trying I just took the world in my palm and made it pay attention. I spoke about my mental health and diagnosis and how I got high in those points in time. They were considered credible singles and songs because I included a repeated hook at the end of each one, and on one or two, dropped the hook and came back in with a short close-out verse. Now I was not just a CEO but an artist just the same, which meant royalties, rights, and even more money to fund the untouchable, undefeated empire. I couldn't see myself fully taking it seriously, but I just rode with the flow and collected checks one after the other. People loved the mafioso lingo and the violence. I started making bulletproof direct-to-garment printed shirts with the caution strip across the center with the initials NRA like the National Rifles Association, but mine stood for No Rats Allowed, and I had the No Rat symbol underneath the caution strip with blood splatter spots on the infamous bulletproof vest with a skull head on each strap. They sold out everywhere we went. Drawing the spotlight from even my own artists, it began to breed envy, and my main artist wanted to leave the label and started paying out of pocket with money I put in his pockets, for studio time to waste his breath making diss tracks. I took out an insurance policy on him, and 2 weeks later he was found in the river with no head, identified by his tattoos after he floated across the waters to hit the border of Mud Island, where people on the ferry traveling across the water spotted something with the figure of a body floating in the water. Speculations rose and the Illuminati theories and beliefs of practices of sacrifice ensued. His head was never found, and when his body was recovered from the water it was pruned and badly decomposed with algae on the cover of the material he was wrapped in. After that nobody else wanted to contest over the spotlight and understood that even if I was hot for the moment, the team was winning, I was representing us. His songs grabbed interest, and seeing that I owned him basically, I collected every dime, and without him here to do shows and his mom having no insurance policy on him, he left his family, kids, and loved ones to start over and starve. But I was more than generous. His mom was bad, a beautiful thick bitch in her mid-40s, so I fucked her and took care of his family. His mom never questioned a thing. He was a disappointment. All the moment I had put in his pockets, and he was spoon-feeding his own people and flashing his benefits in their faces. We were all in agreement being better off without him. His mother had his remains cremated and gave me a portion of the ashes. I had them turned into a diamond and had a ring made with the diamond set in the center as a trophy. The second time I fucked his mom on a different occasion, I convinced her and his baby mama to have a threesome and let me record it. I took some of their dead man's earnings from record sales and royalties I owned and bought the mom a Tesla truck and his baby mama a Wraith and each one of them a Singleton AP watch with a small charm pendant necklace just like mine. Within the next month I put em in a house together and let em live like queens or at least princesses. These bitches cooked me breakfast but naked and fed me like a king. While one or the other gave me a massage or rubbed my feet. Then all of a sudden, there was this pastor that for some odd reason, because he'd heard about me and knew that I funded building my pastor's cathedral for a larger congregation, was targeting me for what I took to be his hate speech, saying how I was wicked and evil and a sinner. So I did my research, had a private eye follow him around, take picture, get insight, and it came to be discovered that not only did he like UG girls, he liked to get drunk and even have his way with young niggas that he paid just like the females, to have his way with them, while his wife was at home thinking he was out doing the Lord's work. Once I got my hands on the recordings and photographs, he easily changed his tone, and since he didn't pay with his life I made him pay me after every collection at the drop-off spot with the congregation's money. To be kind, I let him keep enough to function and, as I called it, keep the lights on. He was preaching for his health. When he finally couldn't take it anymore and he broke, looking for sympathy, he found none. He was covered in shame, and as his flock left he died right where he stood in the pulpit from a massive heart attack and leave his wife like the other niggas, to be a penniless widow. Then a check arrived at her doorstep, special delivery from me. She couldn't do anything but cry. She was so overwhelmed and never thought to take out a life insurance policy. It's like they couldn't see an end, but I was in the blessing business. I didn't need his money, so I never spent a cent of it, just watched it pile up. After he dropped dead, I broke off his widow, and just like the lil homies, I paid for his funeral so the widow could grieve and find peace without the stress of making arrangements and not knowing if she would be able to afford it. Had he never spoke on me, he probably never would have met such a fate, and in another life, possibly never would have been committing such shameful acts of bisexual homosexuality and infidelity. He may have actually been a decent to relatively good man. He never told the congregation who was pressuring him, so I didn't have to worry about backlash, if any at all would have came out of sympathy for their pastor, after they'd gotten over the shock. I transformed his widow into a preacher. I was very well acquainted with the word and knew how to play on people's beliefs with the tool of faith. I learned it from encounters in my younger years when I was in meetings with label exes and my mom was present. They always used God for leverage and never had a penny to offer. Instead they were looking to collect, so I was just doing the same. Psychology taught me many aspects of human nature and the manipulative ways and effective methods to go about in order to gain the desired results from a subject, and that's all. Any of those that posed threats to me were subjects, simple-minded lab rats awaiting my instruction, conductivity, and orchestration. I taught her signs of weakness and vulnerability and how to play on the people's emotions and even use guilt to subdue the people to her will and in exchange bring her the fortune she was seeking, in return, for their salvation. The flock followed and I guided as she led. Simply irresistible, like the jingle I heard on the commercial. My power and authority was increasing and I was the hidden hand of God alone. We, the Rofall family and staff of Rofall Incorporated, were celebrating an enormously gigantic mega-colossal step of roulettes being prescribed and marketed under the brand name, Locetrafine. It was a very high-dollar prescription and was available under special insurance coverage. We were for sure getting paid. We were a privately owned and operating company and corporation, no outside hands in the pot, and they were dying to get in. With the collective generated income we could afford to market projects and products on a major scale and even donated proceeds to our charities. Now they had officially made me a legit and lawful kingpin, just as I expected, manifested, and projected. I knew I'd be on top, even when they saw me as just a low-life bottom feeder. We were leading in the pharmaceutical industries and I was America's highest-paid legal drug lord. I purchased 100 acres of land and was up 150 kilos in buried gold. All bought with, under the table, off the books, tax-free money from a merchant in Dubai and another in Iran. If I had to get 'em shipped, they were concealed in statues and brought in on days that I had hired men working in customs. I celebrated my newly established wealth by having 3 new huge diamond-covered medallions and diamond-covered specially designed Cuban honeycomb link chains made, my own designs. One charm in specific was a 5 by 5 inch Lucifer holding a sword and trident with the serpent wrapping around his leg with fire around him and his wings spread, influenced by Tupac's Machiavelli medallion. Plus I copped an Aston Martin and bought my mom a Phantom and hired a driver since she didn't know how to drive, even though I was prepared to teach her. I had well-supported proof of the visible money I spent, and every dime was accounted for. Some things I passed off as simply gifts from those fond of me or desiring to gain favor at a chance to do business and explore different ventures due to my fame and notoriety with a proven track record of success among my many hosts of endeavors. I now had companies interested and captivated by my ideas and product designs, willing to take on the task and become partners to launch things such as my cigar, luggage, and alcohol brands, funding majority of the projects for a stake and fair percentage in the company's profits and returns. I had well-paid lawyers for occasions like this to dissect the things underlying as an extra set of eyes and ears, properly negotiating in my favor because if I won, they were winners too. We held these meetings in my office within my 150-room estate on the 100 acres I had purchased with heavy surveillance and security systems that only I controlled at all times. Now that I had tasted success on an unfathomable scale, coming from the bottom, I wanted more, and for every desire I had, it seemed like universe had a blessing. Leading film companies were now willing to take on our productions and reshoot on a far greater major scale budget and even cast me in roles for projects they were developing. I was about to be granted the opportunities to open doors on negotiated introductions to my cast and the talented members of my team. I just had to solidify my position and show the potential and capabilities held among our shared acting chops. Once the project was done and everything was finalized, along came premiere night and we were all having a good time, celebrating successfully completing the movie. Now we were about to see it firsthand. The film was flawless and everyone was glowing and smiling inside and out, excited, knowing that we would take the box office, so we all went on to celebrate. Nevertheless, trouble was always near. We pulled up to this club in Hollywood where stars were known to hang out, and me and the homies along with members of the cast make our way in. We're chilling in the VIP having drinks, ordering bottles, smoking and vibing, and not 15 minutes into being there, a couple niggas across the room in blue rags were mad dogging and stirring at us. I'm wearing a burgundy velvet smoker's coat and burgundy velvet loafers with black bottoms with a burgundy rag out my right back pocket. Wasn't no secret we was Damus and pressed the line in representation wherever we went, and regardless of the night, I still wore my vest underneath and had a 45 on my waist plus a blade in my pocket. The homies flamed up dressed for the occasion so they fit in well. We just looked like well-dressed niggas in red and burgundy, but of course it stood out, and so the niggas was looking over at us and made a beeline straight to the head of the VIP booth where the homies was posted on guard, plus we had armed security guards. I'm talking about massive niggas, and so the niggas walk over and security stepped up in front of the homies and was telling the niggas they couldn't let them pass, and asked what business they had with us. We were just trying to have a good time and wasn't looking for any trouble and didn't come to start any problems. The nigga that was staring the hardest spoke up and said, "Y'all didn't pay the house," and so security said, "So who's supposed to be the house, you?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, 'cause that's right, me and the homies." So security's telling him, "Look man, just go your way and we'll go ours." The dude hit his bottle and said, "Nah, how about I send y'all on y'all way to hell," and upped the burner and started shooting, hitting security and me, and all the homies started firing back. It was a shootout in a crowded, tightly packed club. Anybody could get hit, but we had to get them niggas up out the way. We hit the front two and security had on his vest and he shot one of them close range as the other two tried to flee. We didn't know who was hit and who wasn't, but it was total chaos and everybody was stampeding trying to get out. As we make it to the door, the two niggas that had ran had turned around in embarrassment and just started shooting at anybody. People got hit and I carried the actress Monet, that was with us, out on my back. I knew this shit was bad, it was gonna be all over the news, and I knew me and my niggas was gonna be the ones to get blamed 'cause we represented the money. As we make it out, she's panting in a panic saying, "Where's John, where's John?" John was one of the co-stars of the film. This was gonna be his big break, but sadly John didn't make it out. I ran back in after I got her to the car, only to find John laying in a pool of blood already dead. It was no way to fix this shit, we were just out celebrating the moment, now we would be laying a newly acquainted friend to rest. Hollywood was afraid of me and people started chiming in saying everywhere I went death followed. I had built a reputation and pulled myself up by my bootstraps out the gutter and now they were trying to send me back but I came from nothing, Hollywood was just another opportunity, I had enough money to last me the rest of my life. Endorsements were on the verge of pulling out and ceasing business but John's death caused the movie theaters to swell as massive crowds poured in to see what we had made and the producers, though neglectful to say out loud, spread echoing whispers saying that a great deal of success was built on death. My true fans stood for me and though Hollywood was full speed ahead to attempt to shut me out, I won an Academy Award and solidified my spot as a proving actor with undeniable talent. The money that the film made because of the sudden tragedy quickly healed the wounds of all whom had a bitter taste in their mouths when speaking my name and it made them more forgiving witnessing me win several awards that night and staking my aim as a main attraction. The devil must have still had a hold on me. I landed role after role and Hollywood consistently returned to love me, they grew to idolize me, of course I got sued by everybody and the club owners, standing united on the statement that my entourage and I's attire provoked the rival gang members and that we should have displayed more class, especially me as the responsible party and now established as an A-list celebrity who should be long parted from street life and gang culture, saying that my homies were simply leeches mooching off my success and sure to not be satisfied until they pulled me under. I stood firm on the fact that a great deal of my entourage were my actual blood relatives and parts of my security and road management team, along with and representatives of my brand whom simply dressed according to my chosen attire, as burgundy was a favorite color and a reminder of Burgundy ink. My tattoo I started out under the recognized establishment that I started when I was merely a tattoo artist and that wearing such an attire is no provoking manner to anyone but obvious and ignorant, such as displayed by the ones who must be acknowledged approached us and attempted by witness of the joined party and my security, to extort us and then upon being denied further entry in the area as we aimed to ignore them and leave in the hand, drew guns and begin to fire first not only striking security but killing non because they felt owed an unpaid debt, due to our lavish display and celebrity. I counter-sued for defamation and won. I took the money and took a trip to Haiti to see the voodoo priestess and ask for her blessing and a force of protection and donated the money to her and their entire village. We had a feast out of their appreciation and they held a ceremony to properly lead me through and initiate me into the realm of the magic. We smoked cigars in honor and as an offering to the spirits, placing the lit part into our mouths and blowing the smoke backwards out of the butt before smoking them for our personal enjoyment. We drank a ceremonial mixture of goat blood and milk and ate the meal they had prepared. The more sacred parts one won't reveal, but not only was I resurrected but reincarnated and I returned home to Memphis and spent time with my family. In my alone time I dug deeper into the studies of symbolism, witchcraft practice, and black magic to expand my knowledge of the methods applied by others for greater influence in my spiritual guidance when doing the works myself. Before I left, the voodoo priestess gave me this beaded necklace made of large beads and skulls and crosses with a huge skull at the center as the charm. When I got home I had a diamond-covered gold and platinum exact match made to wear with it. It costed $350,000. I had everything I ever imagined and was on top of the world. Then came the rain. One day I received a call that was about to change everything and be the start of it all over again. The Godfather was on the line. He was hiding out and had just lost everything he had access to and was unable to move or touch any of his own money. Those higher up had a vendetta. Supposedly the Godfather had been seeing high-powered officials' wives on the low, recording them performing all kinds of dirty deeds and in the performance of very lewd and explicit acts that would bring great shame and destroy the reputations of such said officials if ever found in the wrong hands, and this had all been told to these men by a rat that the Godfather should have killed long ago but had went into hiding and witness protection, helping to build cases against the Godfather and the family and using his insight to help infiltrate the organization by snitching on inside members that could be flipped when facing enough time, all rounded up and coerced and persuaded to wear wires and plant bugs in the Godfather's home due to their sustained and gained trust that wasn't truly deserved. So they trumped up some charges against him like conspiracy, money laundering, racketeering, extortion, embezzlement, blackmail, murder, you name it, and issued warrants, raiding his home and seizing his property, but his insiders had already gave him the heads up and made him aware, so he went ghost. It was all crumbling right before his eyes and he didn't know who to trust, plus there was a lingering threat posed of a death sentence by any means for the obtaining of the tapes and getting rid of the Godfather for good, because he was a big threat to all that they had going on. Though he was paying the police off, this went high above their pay grade, though he still had allies on the inside. He needed to get out of town and wanted to leave the country, and he wanted me to charter a jet and loan him no less than $1 million and express the power of his gratitude that could be displayed in return for the favor, but he could really use $5 million to cover anything including legal fees just in case he was just so happened to be apprehended, and for his defense alone the lawyer was already asking $1 million, plus it would be beneficial to have another $1 million to win favor among the judge, who though possibly wanting to see him hang and was likely a friend to the officials, still could very hopefully, possibly be bought if necessary, seeing that he still may have a family and mouths to feed, which would also reinforce the intimidation factor, seeing that the Godfather was already a very powerful man, and seeing that he still had friends with financial power to further strengthen the Godfather. It may seem wise to act on his behalf and in his favor. The Godfather stood a 50-50 chance to coming out on top, knowing that even though he had power and influence he still stood against those with just the same and more, with the power to have him whacked in jail, with the ability to convince murderers to do them a favor and execute him based on the promise of a pardon and release from prison, so long as they were successful. Furthermore, he had powerful rivals from the other families and street gangs awaiting him on the inside. Off of one of those millions alone he can live like a king in an impoverished but yet beautiful country, or just as well starting over in a plentiful driving one with the meal he could afford 50 kilos and get fronted an extra 50 bricks based upon his known ability to cover the work. He wanted me to have that $5 million delivered in cash to a secret location that he would send the coordinates to by way of someone he truly knew he could undoubtedly trust, and then he would have his driver take him to board the jet that he wanted me and asked me to charter. He didn't want the money awaiting on the jet just in case he was unable to make it, in case of an emergency forced to abort, but if he at least had the money he could move anyway he felt necessary. I still had undocumented money and money buried, plus money stored in safes in a hidden secret underground bunker. This is money I could touch and spend with no explanations needed. I never let anyone know where I kept my money, only the dope. I already owned a private jet and had the money, so that was simple. This favor was the insurance I needed just in case this life I was living ended and I ever had to make a forced return back to the streets. Who knew, one day the shoe could easily be on the other foot. So I told the Godfather not to worry, I'll take care of everything. I put the money together and was gonna hand my boy Squeaky deliver it at midnight once I got everything situated and received the coordinates to the drop-off spot. Like clockwork everything was going according to plan, and my pilot was on standby, and the Godfather had his right-hand man, an African cat, call around 10 p.m. that night. I had everything put together and told Squeaky to take 2 of my security guards and my left-hand man Azu to meet the Godfather at the drop point and to hit me once everything was done. They took 2 cars and loaded the money in the trunks. Squeaky said he needed to stop by his house first and then they could head to the meet. I simply said okay. Just don't fuck me on this, I'm trusting you, even though I always believed from lifelong lessons that when you tell someone you trust that's always when they fail you, but I trusted him on this. They left and headed out to take care of the business. They made it to the drop-off spot and the men got out and all grabbed the duffel bags with the money inside and carried everything inside. They were at this old abandoned warehouse out in the middle of nowhere. The Godfather was usually a heavily guarded man with heavily armed guards, but this was a situation that caused a great deal of vulnerability for the boss himself. He had 2 men with him, both with guns but also very relaxed though on guard. There was a lot of trust embedded in this situation and the Godfather didn't want to make anybody uncomfortable, so he told the men, his 2 guards, to be at ease. Everybody's a friend here. So they put the guns away and Squeaky and the other men put the bags on the table and the Godfather went to open the bag, and inside on top of the money was a huge dead fish wrapped in newspaper beside a dildo, and the Godfather grew angry from insult and yelled, "What the fuck is this? Is this some kind of a joke? A fucking dildo and a dead fish? What the fuck is the meaning of this?" And Squeaky says, "Nah, you about to be sleeping with them motherfuckers, go fuck yourself," and gun in hand, shot the 2 men and the Godfather with a Glock enhanced with a switch, and Azu said, "What the fuck, man, do you know what the fuck you've just done? give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now, and then Azu drops and the 2 guards along with them, struck from bullets fired from 2 men from behind at the entrance of the factory that Squeaky had already contacted and gave the drop on the situation and told where to be and when to be there. Squeaky took pictures of the dead Don to send to the officials. Once I had told him about everything earlier in the day and the fact that I needed him to make this drop for me tonight, he went behind my back and contacted the officials and had set up an agreement to collect on the murder of the Godfather at the meet that night on top of the 5 mil he had just stolen from me and was now in the wind.